This is a regular domestic pig, and this is a former domestic pig that escaped and has already turned into a wild, dangerous animal. How long do you think this transformation took? Just 30 days. In a month, the calm pink piggies from the farm become aggressive. Some even grow fur. Some pigs need a bit more time, like a couple of months, and it's still an incredibly fast process of going feral. But the real morphological changes happen when the first generation of feral piglets is born. Even though it's just one generation out there, animals are growing longer tusks, longer snouts, and flatter foreheads to make digging easier. It's almost like a fast-track evolution. Being a bit more aggressive also helps them out in the wild because, let's face it, those pigs that can't stand up for themselves end up as dinner for predators, if there are any around. Feral pigs are smaller, leaner, and more muscular than their domestic counterparts. They have well-developed shoulders and necks with coarser, longer, and sparser fur. You should remember that appearances don't always change enough to definitively tell a feral pig that's been on the loose for months apart from one that just got there. If you see two feral pigs looking wild with their shaggy coats and tusks like in the picture, you can spot a former domestic pig by its weight. It'll definitely be heavier. But if both look domestic, the main difference is behavior. The behavior of a feral pig will be completely different. Yeah, it's important to note that the offspring of escaped domestic pigs aren't the same as truly feral boars that have been roaming Europe for millennia. Even if a pig got loose from a ranch in Texas 100 years ago, went feral, and multiplied like crazy, its descendants still won't turn into feral boars. They're just different species, albeit related. By the way, sometimes you can tell former domestic pigs by their curly tails, even if they look wild otherwise. Domestic pigs often keep their tails curled. You know, like how they're drawn in kids' books? Regular feral pigs have straight tails since the curly tail is usually a result of breeding. Also, domestic pigs tend to have smaller brains. But brain size doesn't affect their intelligence. They're still pretty smart regardless. But the main question is why pigs are capable of such rapid changes in appearance and behavior. It seems like no other domestic animal can tap into their wild roots in just a couple of months. Turns out even domestic pigs can quickly go wild, tapping into ancient genes from their relatives that are still hidden in their DNA. These invisible genes can kick in when there are changes in their environment. This phenomenon is called epigenetics, which literally means above or over genetics. Even though changes around pigs don't alter the DNA sequence itself, they can affect how cells read genes. For pigs, this means that an escaped farm animal quickly starts resembling a feral boar, growing larger and hairier within just a few months. Hey, for those who often forget to hit the like button, do it now so you won't forget later. If you've never hit it before, no worries. And for those who've forgotten, well, please don't. Anyway, let's keep going. Actually, scientists discovered this not so long ago. Turns out domestic pigs have way more genes from feral boars than previously thought. Researchers have concluded that modern pigs aren't just the result of isolated breeding, but are actually a mix of domestic pigs and feral boars over many years. While the study focused on European pigs, the same goes for American ones, since they're descendants, so it's pretty much the same deal. In short, pigs kept mating with feral boars even after being domesticated. Usually when animals are domesticated, they're cut off from the wild and other populations. Over time, this creates the domestic pets we know, like dogs. But with pigs, things didn't go as expected. Besides genes that switch on in the wild, let's consider a simple example with tusks. You might think domestic pigs don't have tusks at all, but they actually do. It's just that pigs usually don't get a chance to grow them because they end up as pork chops. Another factor is castration. Male domestic pigs, if not kept for breeding, are often castrated. While it's unclear if this was common practice in ancient times, it's now a standard procedure in industrial farming. Apparently, the meat from non-castrated pigs doesn't taste as good. To reduce risks associated with pigs, many breeders prefer to remove their tusks while they're still piglets. All right, we've got that sorted out, but how exactly do pigs end up in the wild and become feral? Well, they often just escape, taking advantage of opportunities. For instance, wildfires have been raging recently in British Columbia, leading to an increase in the feral pig population. Here's how it went down. The fires damaged fences, giving the pigs a chance to break free from their enclosures. As a result, Wildlife Services received plenty of calls from farmers. They managed to catch and return some of the pigs to their owners, but only some. The rest got their golden ticket to freedom. In the U.S., the story's pretty similar. Most of Michigan's wild pigs are actually Eurasian boars that escaped from hunting ranches. They didn't wait for fires, though. Instead, they dug tunnels, showing how darn good they are at digging. It's generally believed that American wild pigs mostly spread after escaping from private hunting grounds and during illegal transportation across state borders by hunters. And if you think private hunting ranches are rare, there are about 60 of them in Michigan alone, offering wild boar hunting experiences. The good news is that nowadays people understand that a runaway pig won't just disappear into the wild, but will quickly become a serious problem for pretty much everyone. That's why when pigs escape, they're either caught or efforts are made to notify authorities as soon as possible. If they don't do that, pigs quickly adapt to their new surroundings. Being scavengers by nature, they can find food almost anywhere. Usually, feral pigs tend to roam along streams and drainage ditches from one food source to another, and they have a real knack for raiding crops. When fall comes and the harvest is in, they switch over to acorns and other goodies, but they're not picky eaters. Pigs are just way too voracious. They'll gobble up anything that fits in their mouths. They'll gnaw on deer carcasses, raid bird nests, snack on amphibians, rummage through bird feeders, chow down on cat and dog food, and happily root around in garbage. Besides that, feral pigs often go after young domestic animals like lambs, kids, or even newborn calves. While animal products typically make up just a small part of their diet, think about it. Pigs gone wild hunt down lambs. It's like they're actual predators. And if these predatory traits weren't enough, wild pigs mostly live a nocturnal life. They have their own territory where they feed, with adult boars needing anywhere from 4 to 20 square miles. Sows need less, from 4 to 8 square miles. Wild pigs can pretty much live anywhere, from pastures and forests to mountains, riverbanks, and marshy areas. The only catch is they need regular food, water, and shelter, especially in hotter climates. Feral pigs don't have sweat glands, so they're not big fans of high temperatures. They need shade to cope with them. Over the past few decades, pigs have started venturing from the wild into suburban areas and even cities. For these creatures, modern human landscapes like farmland, gardens, golf courses, and dumps are like an all-you-can-eat buffet just waiting to be dug up. Some experts even call feral pigs mammalian cockroaches, and pigs actually live up to that name. Pigs are aggressive enough to literally terrorize towns. That's what happened when a few of them escaped from a farm near the British resort town of Silloth in Cumbria County, turning people's lives into a nightmare. According to locals, these wild pigs were agile, strong, and potentially dangerous. Some people were afraid of pig attacks, so they preferred staying indoors after dark. Those who dared to venture out had to flee for safety. Thankfully, not all pigs managed to escape and go wild. For instance, 2 missing pigs in Queensland were found asleep on a grassy patch next to a gas station half a mile away from their owner's home. The animals simply bolted and then decided to take a nap until sunrise. They were adorable and friendly, all because they'd only been on the loose for a few hours. Well, people also got really lucky. Even a domesticated pig, which hadn't turned wild yet, can be really hard to catch. In the Canadian town of Innisfil in the province of Ontario, a cop got into a scuffle with an escaped pig and ended up losing. The 200-pound animal wasn't keen on being stuffed into a police car, and the officer just ended up covered in mud. He had to call for backup, and it took the combined efforts of the police to finally wrestle the pig into submission. However, this was just a single pig, who also behaved pretty well. Right now in the United States, there's a real invasion of pigs happening, and this pig bomb went off after 1990. That's when hunting pigs started in the northern states, a practice long popular in the southern ones. And hunters say, among other things, that pork is tasty. In Texas and Florida, most wild pigs are either descendants of domestic ones set loose or hybrids. People really got into the idea of hunting wild boars, and there was a demand for it that needed to be met. Plus, with hunting shows on TV often featuring this kind of activity, more and more Americans wanted to give it a shot. So boars started getting transported across the country, and they spread out in different directions, feeling right at home in most regions. It wasn't hard, considering there was plenty of food everywhere. It's worth noting that North America didn't have any pigs at all to start with. Not a single one, neither wild nor domesticated, not even a dwarf or ancient gigantic pigs. Zero. Any pigs you come across on the continent today are either generations of domestic pigs gone wild, or in most cases, wild pigs that have mated with European boars that escaped from ranches. The very ones people were planning to hunt. If humans manage to domesticate pigs once, maybe they can do it again. especially considering how quickly the feral gene activated in domestic pigs. Perhaps it can be switched off. There are quite a few instances of people interacting with feral pigs and, well, sort of taming them in their own way. While there aren't any comprehensive scientific studies yet, we can draw some conclusions from these stories. First, there's no reverse transformation happening, so don't expect a pig to lose its hair, turn pink, or change the shape of its skull and tail. Second, taming older animals is more challenging, which makes sense. It's easiest to tame them when they're babies, so they'll be more friendly to people when they grow up. This is true for most wild animals. Finally, feral pigs that start living with humans again aren't any different from domestic pigs. They just look a bit different. It took us millennia to domesticate pigs, making them calmer and more useful for our needs, like getting more meat or skin. Domestication of pigs began around 9,000 years ago, which is a heck of a long time ago. So even if modern pigs escape and go wild, don't forget, they've undergone a long process of evolution to live alongside humans. You can't just erase that history with a couple of months in the wild, not even a couple of years. So if we catch those feral pigs, they could eventually become domesticated again. So what, they might not even be that aggressive anymore? Well, not exactly. Our perception of domestic pigs as gentle and adorable is largely influenced by movies like Babe rather than real-life experiences. But the truth is, among all domesticated animals, domestic pigs are perhaps some of the most aggressive. If you take a look online, you'll come across numerous stories of domestic pigs causing serious harm to humans. In 2012, for instance, an elderly farmer from Oregon lost his life. His pigs deliberately knocked him over and ate him. In the end, all that remained in their enclosure were his dentures and a few body parts. If you find domestic pigs adorable, chances are you're just loving those cute little piglets. Otherwise, these creatures seem to hold on to their wild instincts pretty well, and they use that genetic memory whenever they can. See you later.